Yeah. Our next speaker is Analee Vinyard. Analee is originally from California.
California, Los
Yeah.
Angeles.
And spent some time also living in Mexico. And she is married to her husband Joel, and between them they have 2 sons and
Three boys and a daughter. We have 4 kids. We're a blended family.
yes. And Analee spends her daytime hours. She's a fantastic cook and baker. She loves to show love through food. And her husband's in the restaurant business, so they both have that kind of same love of food. She's a homemaker, and for fun, Analee likes to.
Well, I have a degree in languages. I've also been in the educational field, like you.
Yes.
I was actually a teacher.
Yes.
Okay. I actually taught English and also Spanish. Okay. So I actually went back and I have a degree in languages, and also in the medical field. So I've done that as well. And I go to hospitals also when I'm being needed. So I keep myself busy there.
So help me welcome Analee Vinyard.
Okay. I never wanted to tell my story to the world, and I certainly didn't want to speak publicly about it. I never wanted to write a book about it, but I've been called by the Lord to speak up, to break the cycle, to share my story, to give a voice to those who have been silenced, to bring hope to those who feel hopeless, because the Lord is faithful and has been to me my entire life. I'm being faithful and obedient. I've always been silenced, and I've carried that. My mom also carried it herself, of staying quiet. My book also mentions, and in the cover it says, shh, finding finally a voice, to speak up. My mom and I were in arranged marriages. Okay. Having someone that they set for us to be with. Okay. And obviously it's hard to talk about these subjects, okay, when we were actually sent to be with someone that was not of our choice. And when we were told that whatever happened at home needed to stay at home, okay. And according to them, to my relatives, I became a little rebellious when God was talking to me and telling me, no, you need to break the cycle, okay? And I had to mature at a very young age. You will see why. I love Romans 8:28, okay? It says, as we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. And I believe that he does everything in you. Have you ever experienced loss? But before I go into that, I would want to go back and rephrase a little bit more about our story in our arranged marriages, and how our culture or our grandparents believed, and the confusion that I had to grow into. And for me it was a lot of confusion and a lot of why, and questioning, not understanding why this was happening to me, and as well my mother. Okay, at the time I didn't know that my mother was also going through this, but I've always been very extremely observant. That is a strength that I have as being a motherless daughter at a very young age. I would observe her and see that there was something very off with her. She would sit there, and I would notice at a moment she was happy, and another moment she was very sad. Okay, she would listen to music, and she also loved to cook and bake. Okay, and I would sit on a stool and help her make little dough to make tortillas de harina, flour tortillas, or corn, or empanadas or, anything that has to do with Mexican food. So why was she sad? What was she carrying? What was wrong? So eventually I started adding things up. Okay, there was something. My mom's sister reveals the story, and I start tying up things, really what was going on. Sadly, they gave me the same. I call it a curse. I didn't ask for it, but my grandfather wanted me to have it. The rest of the family didn't, but because of my personality, really easygoing, it was easy for me to give in to their behaviors. Okay, so because my mom passes, and I'm gonna share a little bit of what happens. Have you ever experienced loss? Losing my mother at 15 was extremely difficult for me. I was the oldest, with a very absent father. A father that I had to be good enough, trying to be the best, trying to ace everything, which I was always in the honor roll, which I always was the best, but I was a girl. He wanted me to be a boy when I was born, you see? And our culture, the firstborn should be a boy. They should not be a female, okay? So when I was born, instead of carrying me in his arms, he told Alma is my mom, Alma Rosa, I cannot hold Analee because she might, fall apart on me. She's, too fragile. She's too, she's gonna fall apart. She's not a man. She's not a boy. My mom carried this back to herself. She didn't say anything till later. She shares this. She would always tell me, Mija, your daddy still loves you no matter what. You need to understand, we're all broken. We're all broken, and we all need Jesus. Because I would always question, very inquisitive as a little girl. Why is my dad this way? Why do I feel rejected? Why does he treat me differently? I felt abandoned as a very young child. Okay, I had to be good in English and Spanish and everything I did. And still till now, I still feel that at times I'm not good enough. Okay, it hurts. But when I realized that my identity was not in Fausto, that's my dad's name, but I had to go through so many things, my identity was in Christ. He adopted me. That's when my life changed. Have you experienced loss? Yes. When I was 15, my mother passes away of placenta previa, okay? In 1988, she traveled a lot because she worked for General Motors. She was the kind of woman that she cared. Not only was it that she was a translator and interpreter, and she was working for motors, not the engine department, the General Motors department. So she was in the department, and there was a big problem that happened in 1985. There was a horrible earthquake in Mexico City. So she went into the office. She had to stay. They asked her if she wouldn't mind staying, working extra hours, helping. There was, I don't know, maybe you've heard of the horrible earthquake in Mexico City. And they said, would you mind staying and working here for us, helping us out? And she said, I would not mind at all. I care about the people. There's kids most likely involved, and I have children myself. And she said, Mom, Dad, keep the kids. I'm staying and working some extra hours. She stays in. She pours her heart. She just spent probably a couple of hours sleeping. She stays in. She says, I need to know there's more survivors. Back then it was called a machine called telex. Telex sends information and communicates back and forth, letting the other side know from Ramos Arizpe, Mexico, Saltillo, all the way to Mexico City of how many people were there, their survivors, back and forth. We end up finding out that there were people still. So she stays extra hours, she comes back home, that beautiful smile that we saw every day. We see her coming home in so much pain. She carried a lot of people's suffering. She was overly caring, overly sensitive of other people. She came home, she says, Mom, this is the results. This is what's happening in Mexico City. After there's always an earthquake, there's always an extra, 1 or 2 extra ones. This woman would pour her heart to others, caring, wanting to help, serve, wanting to do the extra mile. I was just a little girl watching my mom. I would sit there, oh, my mama, oh, what's wrong? She would tell me, I gotta go back to work. I gotta help. We have to do something. We have to make a difference, Analee. There's people that are dying, you know? Yes. So she would go back to work. Losing her at 15, I had my mother and my father in her. Losing her all of a sudden, I became an orphan. My dad was what I just mentioned. He was an absent father. My brother and I, Jesse, we ended up becoming orphans with a newborn baby brother. Okay, by the time one hospital transfers her to the other hospital, it was late. She had bled. And the time that in Mexico, they will not give you a transfusion if there's no blood in the blood bank. That's how it works in Mexico, to exchange that blood type. And they ask you for the same blood type. So that's the hard part. So a cousin that was my mom's cousin, first cousin, was the one that came and gave us the transfusion. So by that time, my mom was already, she was really way down. It was pretty much really late. She started having she had a heart attack that night, in the middle of the night at midnight. The next morning, the doctor comes over and he says, Alma is not gonna make it. I waited for a miracle. She always, as a little girl, I was always taught about the Lord. And I'm very grateful for that. I'm extremely grateful, because if it hadn't been for that, I don't know where I would be right now. I know that she was preparing us somehow. After I waited in that lobby, the doctor comes out and he tells us, I don't understand how my grandfather still, as she's passing, when someone is passing like that, all the organs start shutting down. I don't know if you've ever had a relative. The doctor says we're gonna have to cover her eyes, because if not, you're gonna see her eyes, roll back. Yes. This beautiful lady that loved the Lord, beautiful brown eyes. He said, we're sorry, but everything is gonna start. She's gonna hear you. And my grandfather said, we're gonna have the kids come in, Analee and Jesse, to say bye. It was just too much for us. We're just kids. Okay, 14 and 9. Before that, we're in the hallway. I was running from the whole hospital, okay, and yelling. And I got in one corner and I just got on my knees. I said, Lord, I know that you're here. I know that you're with us. Because I remember what my mom taught me. Seek the Lord. I said, I know that you work miracles. We cannot do it. We won't be able to make it. Lord, help me. What is my brother and I going to do without her? We can't make it. We don't count on our dad. We're alone. We're becoming orphans if she passes. We don't have anyone to rely on. Our grandparents, you'll know. The miracle never happened. The miracle never came. We waited and it never happened. We stepped in, and as we're stepping in her room, I had to be strong for my brother because I'm the oldest. And we're stepping in, and my grandfather and my grandmother are there, and they promised her. My grandfather steps up and he says, we promised to take care of them. We promised to be there for them. He promised so much, but he never did. To be there to take care of them. And I had to say something to my mom. I wanted to tell her that I cannot do it without her. I wanted to open my heart and tell her that I don't know how I was going to bear my life and continue my path with my two brothers. My baby brother that had just been born a day before, and also my brother Jesse. I said, Lord, I just don't know how I'm going to be able to make it through. And as I'm looking back, I said, well, just a week ago, everything was fine. I was hoping it was a nightmare. I was hoping it was a bad dream. I was hoping that something was not there, you know. I was hoping that something went wrong, you know. I was having a bad dream, or no, I knew that this was happening, and I had to say goodbye. So I stand right next to her bed, and I hold her hand, and I talk to her in Spanish, and I called her mommy, you know, mamita. Everything's gonna be okay. Even though I felt in my heart that everything was falling apart. Everything's gonna be okay. My brother and I are gonna be fine. My baby brother will be okay as well. I know we will see you again. This isn't over. We're gonna be in heaven, and we're gonna be with you someday. After that, we step out, and right 1 o'clock, the doctor comes out and he says she just passed away. I had to make funeral arrangements. I matured at a very, very, very fast. I didn't have a choice. You understand? I see you all, and definitely I'm like right here. You understand? I didn't have a choice. I became mature one day after the other. It just came to me. I had to be there for my brothers. I never had a time to mourn my mother because my grandparents never allowed it. I became very much like my mother, very sensitive, very caring for other people. And that was a lot because I saw that behavior of caring. My mother was much about giving herself to others. And she always told us that when we're here, when we're alive, is when we're supposed to let other people know how much we care. Not when we're already passed, during funeral times, when we cannot prove and show others how much we love them. When we're alive is when we're supposed to prove to our neighbor. We're supposed to care for our neighbor, be there for one another, be kind, be loving for our loved ones, for our relatives, for someone, even, someone that comes and does a cleaning at your house. Be there. Stay humble. Stay grounded. And I appreciate that. All those things that she taught me, I've gone back. I'm like, she was right. That lady was very right, and I'm very grateful. I feel honored that I had that kind of mother in my life, because right now I don't know where I would be. Okay? Then, after my mother's loss, I was taken to live with my grandparents on my mom's side. I had, in high school, my high school sweetheart, just like my mother had also her boyfriend, which it never went beyond that. I always believed in humble beginnings. Someone that you know that you have a lot of things in common, intellectually, okay? I've always been the kind of person that I feel very fond of someone that is very smart, okay? That I could learn a lot from, okay? Someone that is very easygoing, okay? That I could learn, that I could grow, that I find a lot of things in common. Humble beginnings, that it starts as a friendship, that you could sit down and they could help you with a class that you're having a hard time, to pass, and if something's going bad that day, they could just read you by seeing you, and what's going on, why did it go bad, that they know that you will reach your purpose, that you're the kind that you work hard, and that, that's how I thought about a true relationship. Well, my grandparents figured it out. I was invited eventually to the prom. I was invited. I was doing drill team. I tried to spend as much time out of the house because they were very abusive. Okay, so I know what abuse is. Okay, my grandfather was extremely physical, with me. There was times that I would go to school with bruises, because whenever his diabetes would go high, he would blame it on his diabetes, and he would get, whatever he had. If it was the cord of the iron, or if it was the hanger, okay, whatever he had, or he would pull me for my hair, or I would hear these stories as well from his own kids that he did the same thing to them. So it was a generational thing that he did to all of us, but it had a stake in the family. We were not allowed to talk about this. We were not allowed for it to go beyond that. My dad didn't know about this because he would come once in a while to drop off Christmas gifts, spend some time, take me out to eat, my brother Jesse, but he would just, because he was so busy with his wife, his new wife, and having his own life, that he was not really steady. He was not really there for us. So, and I didn't feel comfortable sharing, because my grandmother and my grandfather would say, well, listen, if this is how it goes here, know that over there with your dad, most likely it's gonna be worse. His wife is not your mother, so you don't know what to expect, okay? So I knew that I was already in fear, okay? That was already a concern for me, being in that kind of environment with my grandparents, and then going into my dad and his new wife that he had. Okay. My grandparents set me up for my arranged marriage after my mom's death 3 years later. And they come up and let me know that I go to my prom. I'm invited by this person that was my high school boyfriend. And they let me know that after the prom, he comes and talks to my grandfather and my grandmother, and it doesn't go well. He mentions that he's interested and that he would like to continue visiting and spending more time with me and us getting to know each other. And my grandfather says, no, we already have plans for her, which I didn't know what plans, they were thinking of. We have plans for her. She's too pretty for you. You really don't have what to offer her. Well, obviously not, because we were both in high school, okay? One was he was a senior and I was a junior at the time. So I finished my senior year before, I finished in January. And as I'm finishing, they tell me as I'm coming back from school one day I come back from school and they pull me aside and they say, we're taking you downtown because we want you to look into wedding dresses. And I'm like, what am I going to be looking into wedding dresses? I really don't have a reason to look into wedding dresses. No, why am I going to? So they take me into downtown Bakersfield and they start looking into wedding dresses. My grandmother, we step in there, the lady that's there, she's excited. She says, oh, she's going to be happy looking into wedding dresses. Let's find which one she would like, one with pearls, one long, a short. Does she want it to be, really close to her, tight to her, the girl noticed that I was not happy about it. She noticed that on the third time and the third try, it took me a long time to come out of the fitting room. By the time I come out, I'm just crying. My grandfather gives her you gotta go and talk to her about it. Well, not to make it that long, they end up taking me to Mexico, which my grandmother and my mom were born in Mexico, but I was not born in Mexico, and I love Mexico. I speak Spanish fluently, but it was not my choice. I didn't have a voice. They never asked me if that's what I wanted. They took away my dreams. They took away my desires. They took away what I wanted. And they left me in a country that had nothing to do with me, in my mom's house, to live, making me believe that I would be in a well place, in a good place, because my mom had a nice home. And I was to live there and stay there because I was not willing to sell my mom's property, sell her house. They took away her jewelry, her insurance, her life insurance, and everything they could. But I wasn't willing to do that because that property was for my brothers and I figured out that that's where they were going. I said, I'm not gonna do that. This is not okay. So that was the punishment for me not willing to do it. So I had to stay in Mexico. Marrying someone that it was not of my choice. So I stayed there and I had to figure out how that relationship was going to work. I asked my grandmother, my grandfather, I begged them, Grandma, please help me. I don't want to marry this person. She said, I really cannot help you. You have to talk to your grandfather. Let's see if your grandfather wants to help. But I'm not going to do this. I just can't help you. I talked to him, but I realized that I was not going to really go that far because my grandfather was extremely physical, and there was no way. It was just his way, and there was no other way. So eventually, I end up getting married. They stay still for a week. They leave me there, and I'm distraught. I'm like, my life has been taken away from me. I feel sexually taken. And I'm like, what's gonna happen with me? I'm staying in another country. I don't have who to go to. I don't have the support of my dad. I'm alone. My brothers are back in the United States. One was just 5 years apart from me, younger, and the other one was a newborn. He was just 3 at the time, 3.5. I had a very hard time having children. I was forced by his family to have children. I had a mother-in-law that was extremely pushy. When are you going to be having children? What's wrong with you? Why can't you have any children? I had children when I was 15. I got married very young, and I was really obviously not wanting to have any children. Eventually, it took me 3 years to get pregnant. And when I'm finally pregnant, at 5 months, I'm teaching, and I started feeling sick, I head out in the later morning, and the doctor checks me, but it was not a doctor, it was actually a doctor practitioner. The doctor practitioner that sees me that day. And obviously it's my first child. I really don't know. I don't have my mother to help me. I don't have my grandmother that's over here in the United States. I go in, and I'm sitting, and he's checking me, and he ends up causing me the rupture. I start bleeding internally. He puts his hand in. I start bleeding. I don't even know what's going on. I'm like, this doesn't sound right. This doesn't feel right. I go back still to teach. As I'm teaching, I'm starting to seeing how I'm like, I can't stand. I have to call the teacher that's right next to my classroom. I'm like, please help me. And I have to let them know what's going on. And at the time I had to call my husband. I said, please come and help me. I cannot even drive. He comes and gets me, and I'm actually pulled in to the hospital that my mother started her deathbed. Where she's being transferred later to the other hospital in Monterrey, Mexico. It was like 30 minutes. At the time it was 45 minutes because there was no freeway. Now there is a freeway that takes you faster from Saltillo to Monterrey. And I'm there, and as I'm there, I'm thinking, my mother had to be somewhere here. Why, Lord Jesus? I knew God. I knew that God existed since the beginning. But now, I'm losing my child. The doctor comes in and checks me, and then he calls my husband and he says, "We're sorry to tell you, but the person that received her is a doctor practitioner. It was not a doctor. Her baby, she's 5 months along. She could die as well. Analee is very far along, that she is on the line of losing. She's going to lose her child. But also, she is also in the risk of dying." At the time when I listened to that, I said, it doesn't matter if I die. It's okay. I wanted to die because there was no reason for me to stay. I wanted to be with my son. I questioned God. Why, God, are you doing this to me? I know you exist. I know you're here for me. But I don't have who to go to. They told me the process that I had to go through. They told me that I had to be cleaned, that they were gonna sleep me, they were gonna put me under, so they would actually clean. I became really good friends to the nurse. I think I actually would caused, or probably I would probably mock her, or I became a stalker, or it was so much, the pain, that in the hospital I asked if I could hold my son, and they said no. I asked if I could bury my son, they said no. I asked if I could see my son, if I could sing a song, they said no. They had to cover their tracks of what they had done, because it was, they knew that they had done wrong, you see? So that was the only way for them to cover themselves. It was very traumatic for me to be there, knowing that my mother had gone through that, and I was going through that, and it was too much for me to process. Till now that I wrote my book, I've been able to process this, and now that I've been able to talk to my husband, this is helping me to heal. I didn't have the opportunity, and obviously I went through a lot of therapy to be able to talk about all this. I never had the support of talking and sharing this. It was not easy for me. I knew of God. I always knew of God, and I'm very grateful that my mom always brought us to the Lord. But now that I've experienced with this, losing a child, losing my mother, I was several months in a bed. After that, going home, empty-handed. I laid there, and I decided I didn't want to continue living. And that's when I really saw the Lord. That's when I actually experienced His love. I laid there, and my father-in-law, that was actually an alcoholic, he loved to have his tequila, and he sat there, and the bed is right here, and he sat right there on his little chair, and he would not leave the chair. And he saw days that I would not eat, I would not drink, I would just stay there, watching probably the wall. I don't know what I was looking at. He said, I'm staying right here with you. I said, Lord, I don't understand why this is happening. I really want to go. I want you to take me. I wanted my child, and I wanted this son. My father-in-law said, please don't. Don't argue, please. It will be well. God will give you another son. I know God will. I said, I don't want no other son. I want this son. Because this was a son that He had already designed and planned to give me. But this person that caused this problem, caused and deviated God's design. And it's not okay. I said, I want to go. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. I don't know. Then he said not to say a word, to let God decide. I paused, and then I talked to God. I cried out to God. I said, Lord, I'm not going to be able to make it this time. I will not be able to get up from this bed. Help me. Get me up from this bed. I don't have the desire to get up from this bed. I can't. Humanly, I can't. I don't know how. I don't know where.
40.
Maybe it was a day or two. I decided to get up from that bed and eventually have a meal with my in-laws, because that's where I was staying at the time. I eventually decided to go and have a meal with them, which they were horrendous. The only one that was very kind and very sweet was my father-in-law. He was very sweet because he was also an orphan. He was an orphan, so he understood my situation, which I have a father, but he's always been in and out. He's always been like that. So
Analee, you're gonna have to move forward because it's 40 minutes already.
Well, God gave me the desire after that to read the Bible, to worship Him, to talk to others about Him, to pray for others, and with others that have been ill. We must encourage every soul traveling this path we call life, because as we often see, it can be a brutal journey. I believe that no other greater one exists, that's the Lord. There is no one more powerful and none more able to willingly help us than God. I have found him to be faithful and true. He is present in the middle of life's steepest storms and always near the brokenhearted. He is the only one who can mend a broken heart, and he will mend your broken heart. I encourage you to, and invite you as well, to come to the only one that can bring you back and put you together again. That is the Lord. Thank you.